Lobna Ismail is going to talk about there's a ghost in our house, Lahm al-Khafi.
All right. Thank you all for attending. I'm happy to see familiar faces and guests. Happy to be here with you today. I'm sorry I did not prepare a PowerPoint. Didn't have the time, but I had some pictures related to the play that I will show you as I relate to you the story. I would like to begin with the story of the play before we go into scholarly grounds. The play is called Baytena Shabah, or There is a Ghost in Our House, or A Ghost in Our House, by our famous Lenin, and I'll talk about him later after the story. Now let's hear the story together. It is a beautiful, grand and quite shabby old mansion on the northern coast of Egypt, in a deserted spot in Mazhar, a coastal city known for its natural beauty and wonderful sea. Two people await the arrival of a family of 7 dispersed cousins who never met before. These two people are a lawyer, his name is Gad al-Ha, and I will translate the meaning of the name in Arabic because all the names are quite ironic. They are totally contradictory with the character of the personality of the character. The lawyer Gad al-Ha, in Arabic, bounty of the truthful, he's not truthful at all, who telegrammed the cousins earlier to inform them of the death of the grandfather, a rich but eccentric man who had deserted the house in mysterious circumstances in the past. And then there is the loyal caretaker, Abdu, a typical Egyptian name for a caretaker. It has no other name than it, that is the slave of God. Bent and mute, he mumbles incomprehensible utterances as he moves around the house. The lawyer had earlier telegrammed the cousins to read the will of the grandfather and to receive the inheritance he is said to have left them, that is the grandfather. They are an odd group of different temperaments, backgrounds and ways of thinking that represents the basic ideological trends and character types that are most prominent in Egyptian society nowadays. The pretentious, this is number one, the pretentious, dilly-dallying, shilly-shallying, wavering journalist, intellectual, who has no fixed conviction. His name is Hazem. Hazem in Arabic means strict or firm, but he's neither strict nor firm. He's a typical intellectual, a typical Egyptian intellectual. His younger brother, meaning pride or pride of the family, is not really a pride of anything. He is a neurotic, edgy university student, given to fits and hallucinations. Coping mechanism, these are coping mechanisms used to fend his fears of failure and the oppression of his controlling brother and the educational system in Egypt. As meaning richness, this is the third one, a greedy businessman, of course he's rich, of shady dealings and a sour reputation for always being in debt. Shallow-minded, this is another one, shallow-minded, superstitious, funny and naturally outgoing but coercively veiled cousin. Her name is Mahasin, or beauties or goodness in the plural, who is oppressed by her preachy, greedy, sanctimonious and ridiculous husband, Derwish or Dervish or Dervish, another symbolic name, Dervish-like. Both have spent some good years in the Gulf. There is also Muwaffaq, or successful, he's not successful at all, or compromising, this is another name, a vain, petty civil servant whose measly government salary barely allows him to make ends meet. And then there is the beautiful Amal, Hope, a lovely, attractive, trained interior decorator, romantic and flighty, who falls in love with Mansour, our hero and protagonist. Mansour in Arabic means victorious, and all through the play he really tries to be victorious. We know why now. He is the last of the cousins, and they meet on the train, and during the ride to Matruh, they fall in love. Mansour is an intelligent, witty, happy-go-lucky young man with a degree in agriculture that he never puts to use. He is chronically unemployed, and he is obsessed with thoughts of immigration from Egypt. The inheritance proves a mirage. The grandfather died penniless and in debt. The derelict mansion is the only living memory of a wealth now gone. What to do with the house forms the very first conflict. This is the very first phase of the play. Hilarious, with a good deal of mirth and satirical laughter, the ensuing contention, division, and fights are quite poignant. A sudden apparition, a ghost, named the Ghost, Al-Shabah, appears to Fakhr, the neurotic student. Everybody acknowledges the presence of the ghost as a reality, which is strange. Only Mansour, the protagonist of the play, denies its mere existence, quite vehemently and with loads of cracking jokes that target almost everyone. Yet with the introduction of this bad ghost, who obviously means to frighten them, the second phase of the conflict begins. How to get rid of the house. A neighboring Bedouin called Badawi, another significant and symbolic name, arrives to the scene and offers to buy the house. He is from Matruh, but he represents all types of Badawis. Ignorant and avaricious with a white galabiya and headgear, Badawi pushes the conflict further. Another ghost then appears to Fakhr, luring the cousins to the valuable library, which nobody cares for, except Mansour and Amal, who amidst the mass ghost hysteria begin to doubt the sanity of the doubts with regards to the ghost, and to delusions of an imaginary hidden treasure that drives them to dismantle the house in a most frantic search, destroying the library, laying the garden waste, and gutting it out to sink in the sewage. Mansour with Amal and Muqbil, the young generation, tries to save the house, while the others, the older generation, are intent on selling, renting, or pulling the house down, with Badawi, vulture-like, waiting for the house second fall. The play ends with the upper floor burning and Mansour reaching his hands for the audience, crying and calling on them for help, asking them to join him and his young cousins in saving the house from the ghosts inside and outsiders coming into, who are coming onto the stage and acting as a barrier. Lots of ghosts come onto the stage and they appear in very shabby clothes, standing as a barrier between the stage and the audience. In the play, as you can guess, the barrier ghosts are nothing but the pentagon of ignorance, avarice, superstition, abuse of religion or religious abuse, and critically important, irrational thinking, which is quite predominant in our society. All root causes of the sense of chaos, confusion, loss of direction, and befuddlement, uncertainty, and suspicion that bedevil Egypt today. As you hear, this is a very conventional setting or a situation, a place where all characters are brought together under one ceiling, each an identifiable stereotype representing a social ailment that is so specific or local, so to speak, and the situation is as old as the ghost. The formula is that it's a comic thriller or burlesque horror farce. Now, this is sort of a frame or a skeleton of the plot. Now let's see what's the relation between Shoyenka, in my title, Lenin, and the play. Now, Wall Shoyenka, born in July 1943, is a notable Nigerian playwright, poet, activist, and Nobel Prize winner. Lenin Aramli, very close to that date, August 1948, he was born in the 18th of August, my birthday. He's a distinguished Egyptian playwright, director, producer, TV, and cinema scriptwriter. Now, what brings those two playwrights together today? One essay, a testimonial paper, and the play. The essay is Drama and the Revolutionary Ideal, which is part of my title. It's originally a lecture delivered by Shriyanka at the University of Washington's faculty seminar in 1973. It was later published in a book and reproduced in another book about Shriyanka. The testimony is Comedy of the East, the Art of Cunning, presented by Lenin himself at the International Conference on the Comic Condition as a Play with Incongruities. Subtitle, Cultural Varieties in Arabic and Western Theatre. It was in Tétouan, Morocco, April 2005. And of course the play is Baytena Shabah, which may be a surprise to many of you here. It was first written in 1993, and it was an idea in 1993, written in 2005, and produced in 2012. Now, my present paper seeks to explore the cunning strategies, the title of Lenin, and the formal aspects of a rumbly satirical performance, which make the Baytena Shabah a true manifestation of drama as a revolutionary ideal. To do that, the paper establishes a dialogue among Shriyanka's ideas in his acclaimed lecture, and Rumley's social and artistic vision in his testimonial paper, and the 2012 first production of Baytena Shabah by the famous Egyptian director Hazem M. The dialogue underlines these following ideas. For a dramatic work to fit into the revolutionary idea criteria, it must be, or should not be blurred or burdened by ideology. The matrix of creativity lies in what Shriyanka calls the regenerative potential of society, and we'll come to that now. It should be also effective in terms of ideas and effective in terms of emotional effects. That is, audience participation, the audience suffer and resolve stage auditorium moments of anxiety, and these are quite integral parts of the meta-physical space of the performance. The last criteria is the revolutionary energy of that ideal must spring from the internal satirical thrust of the work as a whole and the negotiation between the familiar and the metaphorical. Now, before I start my exploration of that dialogue, I would like to briefly, jot down some notes on both writers. Many of you might be familiar with Shriyanka's celebration of ritual experience in drama, that is, the self as individual and the self as part of the community, the surrender of individuation to communal experience during dramatic performance, and then reassembling the individual self by the end of the performance. It happens in ritual and it happens in dramatic performances where the audience participation comes to its maximum. Now, you will also recall, those of you who know Shriyanka, his outspoken political views, his activism, his prison years, his solitary confinement during Nigeria's civil war in 1967, an important date for us. This is the date of our Nakba, and escape from Nigeria to the States, and back to Nigeria again during civil war, and then back to the States again. For a good number of people, Shriyanka's activism has often placed him under the category political and revolution. Now, Ramli is far, far from public confrontational political activism. He is the soft revolutionary. He's not a political writer at all, as he says, he claims, which might make him only seem a docile figure compared to Shriyanka. Lenin and Ramli in this room pleaded not guilty when political and revolutionary were tagged to his work, saying his satirical plays were more like social tracts than political statements. But then he told me once in a private phone conversation, everything around us has to do with politics. Bread on your kitchen table is politics. Gas in the pipes is politics. Petrol in your car, the education your daughter gets, your salary, what you see on TV, the air you breathe, how people deal with each other. Every aspect of your daily routine is politics. This was his terrain. Now, a note for our non-Egyptian guests. Lenin al-Ramli is very much occupied with, or rather troubled by, patterns of metaphysical thinking behavior, fanaticism, narrow-mindedness, negation of the other, socio-political savageness and barbarianism, the psychological wasteland of the human spirit, and, most importantly, religious abuse or the misuse of religion for social and political purposes and gains. Given the proverbial Egyptian's love for humor, as he explains in his testimony, he has long opted for comedy, aligning himself with the voice that speaks in jest while being the height of serious thinking. His resort to cunning, strategies in a variety of satirical forms and guises, he states, has helped him evade censorship and confrontation. But not always. With the recent rise of fundamental Islamists in Egypt, he was disproportionately targeted like many other Egyptian artists. And last Feb, he faced a 3-month prison sentence. The charge was contempt of religion. He had a good lawyer, there was no case, and it didn't work. Now, back to the dialogue. Early this year, while researching for literature and revolution, I came across Shuyenka's essay, Drama and the Revolutionary Ideal. My scholarly discovery coincided with the opening of Baytena Shabah. A few weeks later, Hazem drew my attention to Ramli's testimony, translated by Hazem himself, which is The Art of Cunning. Reading both with a comparative lens, I realized that, desperate as they seem, both playwrights are speaking the same language, the language of the creative mind that sees drama as the revolutionary ideal, or rather, to echo Professor Ashcroft, the evolutionary ideal. Now, I will have this, and if you're generous enough to give me 5 times, I will appreciate that. Both Shuyenka and Ramli staunchly believe in the dynamic evolutionary magic of theater, which makes it the best medium for not for ideological change, which they know can be momentary or like a strong perfume, quick but still volatile or subject to manipulation, but a medium for consolidation, for creating a space for regeneration, for reawakening of consciousness. Theater as an incubating womb for what he calls the regenerative potential of society. Ideological interests, Shuyenka states, always blunt, make vulnerable and overburden drama's integrity as an art form, which is by nature a revolutionary medium. The less consciously ideological the dramatists appear to be on stage, that is via the speech, action and reactions of his characters, the more effectively would the subversive intent of his message be disseminated. Ramli also sees that genuine writing is the one resulting from anxious questions and not from settled convictions. He said, my anxiety pushed me to embody these questions theatrically, in a form and manner as palatable as possible to the audience. I have never entertained any hope of winning this audience to my particular cause, dogma, or party line. The very act of raising questions is enough. As mentioned above, the goal of both subversive intent and theatrically formulated anxious questions is the regenerative potential of society, which can only materialize during a drama and performance, to use Shuyenka's words, via active participation, which is a major part of the evolutionary possibilities of theater as an art form. Now, for Shuyenka, of course, the best playground is ritual experience, but for Ramli, it's his brand of satire, which prominent Egyptian writer Anis Mansour once described as tickling the spectator with a knife. A combination of comedy's humorous laughter and tragedy's tears, where according to Ramli, the audience crack a laugh and shed a tear, where comedy becomes the act of fending off the causes of tears. So numerous as these causes are in our world, where the satirical exposure of our failings demands an equal level of detachment and involvement. And he says, when I set out to write a script, it's the total attention of the audience rather than their admiration that I care about most. I devote the major part of my energy to using my chosen form in a way that best communicate ideas, but all with the defining aim of keeping my audience glued to their seats, to have them hold their breath, to delight and to shake, to entertain and to shock, to speak to all and to ridicule all without the risk of banishment. These are Al-Ramli's main strategy with the audience. Now I will leave Shyenka and focus on the first element, or there are three. I will take just one for time consideration. Active participation in relation to effective and affective space. Active participation takes place on many levels. The first of these is when the audience become an integral part of the physical and metaphorical space of the performance, namely an extension of the protagonist, Mansour, who represents the good Egyptian, the doubting Egyptian, and therefore they become part of the conflict taking place. To achieve this, Ramli presents Mansour as a full-blooded character, not a stereotype. In fact, the play draws its momentum from the unfolding of Mansour's quest for certainty, surrounded by almost everyone who confirms not merely the existence of the ghost, but the ability of those apparitions to control human lives for good or bad. At moments of doubt, Mansour's inner monologues, rich with negotiations with his younger self as a child, whose ears had caught popular stories about ghosts and gods and the likes, strengthened the extension of the audience as Mansour. Mansour's younger self, like many selves in the auditorium, seems to have conquered its fears by the powers of scientific, logical thinking and the art of doubt. But as it turned out, nothing has vanished. Fears are still lurking inside him as they are waiting inside us, waiting for the mass hysteria of his cousins to gather force and threaten himself. But this is momentary. From the very beginning, Mansour's psychological interiority underlines an ability to become an authentic individual. He is the one character whose inner voice is heard. His self-consciousness or self-overhearing allows for self-control and creates moral agency. His dialectical arguments and jerking comments, his ontological dilemmas, like his awareness that his degree is useless in a society where education and the job market stand at odd ends, that he has no vocation, that he is lost in and to his own country, all lead him eventually to fight back and reassemble himself. The audience follow the same route and hail the regeneration of the protagonist's potential and consequently their own. So metamorphosing in the process, the members of the audience move from being receptive spectators to active participants in a drama that takes place not only on stage, but also inside themselves. They become part of Mansour's vehement denials, his doubts, fears, and his exclusion from the group, his desperate trials to save the house as he struggles with the forces of sinister, ghostly forces and chaos that exist in the arena of the performance space. His anxieties, and those of the other characters, become our own. Anxiety manifests itself in the members of the audience over whether or not the protagonist will resolve and survive the confrontation. It is at such deliberately created moments of anxiety for the audience that the effective dissemination of revolutionary messages takes place. It's the audience response to those crucible-like moments of anxieties that form the inner thrust of the work. Shall I stop? Thank you.